The Thanksgiving group photo hangs in the living room. Everyone is in it, except me. She can't smile. Get her out of the frame, my stepmother said. 10 minutes later, she slapped me hard in the kitchen for sulking. That night, I left in silence. The next morning, I returned with a plan to turn their perfect picture into evidence. My name is Sloan Mercer. I am 32 years old, and I am an operations manager at Halcyon Civic Works. My job is logistics. I organize shelters, manage supply chains for food banks, and ensure that when a crisis hits, the trucks move, the volunteers are rostered, and the spreadsheets are accurate. I am good at it because I function best when variables are clearly defined and outcomes are measurable. My world at Halcyon is built on processes, accountability, and the quiet satisfaction of seeing a complex problem solved efficiently. My family home in Westbridge, New England, is not that world. Westbridge is the kind of town that looks designed for postcards, old colonials, a town green with a gazebo, and gas lamps that flicker on at dusk. As I drove the 2 hours from the city, the snow had already begun. It wasn't a real storm, just a persistent, wet dusting that blurred the edges of the bare trees and slicked the roads. It was the day before Thanksgiving, and the air was thick with the manufactured urgency of the holiday. I pulled into the driveway of the house I grew up in, the one my father, Grant Mercer, still lived in. It was immaculate, as always. Delia Cross, my stepmother, ensured it. The symmetrical wreaths on the double doors were perfect. The white lights strung through the box hedges were ruler straight. I cut the engine and sat for a moment. The silence of the car a brief buffer. I could see them through the front window. Delia, glamorous even when organizing throw pillows, was dressed in sharp cashmere, her blonde hair immaculate. She was pointing, directing. My father, gentle and quiet, was nodding. His shoulders slumped slightly in that familiar way that telegraphed compliance. He avoids friction. He has been avoiding it for 15 years, ever since Delia moved in, and my half-sister, Paisley, who is 24, was visible in the reflection of the window, her face illuminated by her phone, completely disengaged from the physical setup but entirely absorbed in the digital performance of it. I sighed, grabbed the gifts from the passenger seat, and stepped out into the cold. The air smelled like wet pavement and distant wood smoke. The box in my arms was heavy, a new, professional-grade roasting pan. Their old one was warped, a fact I'd noted in September. The other bag held 3 bottles of craft apple cider from a cidery near my apartment. Something festive, something neutral, a peace offering, an entry fee. The moment I opened the door, the noise hit me. It wasn't loud, but it was dense, the clink of silver, Delia's sharp instructions, and a generic holiday jazz playlist. "Sloan, you're late," Delia said, not looking up from her task of straightening a runner on the dining table. "The photographer will be here in 20 minutes. The snow slowed things down, I said, setting the heavy box by the kitchen doorway. "This is for the kitchen." "Fine. Put the cider in the pantry, not the fridge. It takes up too much space." She flicked her hand, a gesture of dismissal. "Paisley, stop staring at that screen and go put on the dress I laid out. Grant, are the fireplace logs arranged? I want the stacked birch look, not the messy pile." My father, already moving toward the fireplace, just nodded. "Right away, Delia." This was the tradition, not the meal, not the gratitude. The tradition was the performance, culminating in the annual Thanksgiving group photo, every year. Our neighbor, Mr. Henderson, a retiree with a passion for photography, would come over with his expensive camera. He would capture the perfect family moment. Delia would then have it professionally printed, oversized, and framed. It would be placed in the center of the living room, directly over the mantel, replacing the photo from the year before. It was an annual changing of the guard, a public declaration of continued, curated perfection. I went to the kitchen to unbox the roasting pan. Needing a moment of simple, physical activity, the weight of the stainless steel was satisfying. It was a good tool. I left it on the counter and returned to the living room. trying to find a place to stand where I wasn't in the way of the frantic, scripted preparations. "Sloane, you're just standing there," Delia said. "Go help your father with the logs. No, wait. You'll get dust on your sweater. Just stand by the window and look pleasant. Mr. Henderson is here." Mr. Henderson came in, stamping snow from his boots. "Happy Thanksgiving, Mercers, Delia. The light is fading fast. We should probably get this done." "Of course, Jim. We're ready." Delia clapped her hands, a sharp sound that made everyone jump to attention. "Places, everyone, Grant, center, by the fireplace, Paisley, on his left, I'll stand on his right." They assembled, my father, looking vaguely uncomfortable in a new cable-knit sweater. Paisley, now in a burgundy velvet dress, instantly striking a pose, one hand on her hip, her chin tilted. Delia, radiant, the absolute center of gravity, smoothing her sweater over her non-existent hips. I moved to stand next to Paisley, the logical empty spot. Delia held up a hand. "Stop, Jim. Wait. The composition is off." She stared, her head tilted. Paisley looked annoyed. "Mom, it's fine. My angle is good." "No, it's too crowded on that side." Delia looked at me. Her eyes scanned me. From my practical boots to my simple wool sweater, I wasn't in velvet. I hadn't received the wardrobe memo. "Sloane," she said, her voice suddenly bright and syrupy. "Darling, the mantel looks so bare behind us. Those brass candlesticks on the sideboard. Could you grab them? We need them in the shot. Just arrange them quickly." I looked at the sideboard. It was across the room. I looked back at the family, perfectly posed. "You want me to get them now?" "Yes, quickly, we're losing the light." I turned and walked across the room. I heard Mr. Henderson murmur, "Should I wait for—" "It's fine, Jim," Delia's voice cut in, sharp and final. "She's just fixing the background. Get ready. 1, 2. I picked up the heavy, ornate silver tray that held the 4 unlit brass candlesticks. It was my grandmother's. It was heavy. As I turned back, my steps faltering, I heard the click and saw the flash reflect off the glass of the window. They had taken it. "Oh, that's perfect," Delia chirped. "That's the one? Jim, let me see." I stood frozen in the middle of the living room, holding the heavy tray. Paisley was already off the stage, her phone back in her hand. My father was looking at his shoes, rubbing the back of his neck. Mr. Henderson was fiddling with his camera, showing the preview screen to Delia. A cold numbness started in my chest. I walked toward them, the tray still in my hands. "You took it already?" Delia didn't look at me. She was beaming at the tiny screen. "It's wonderful. Paisley, you look divine. Grant, so handsome." As I got closer, trying to hand off the tray, I leaned forward. Delia made an irritated noise and stepped back, bumping my arm. "Sloane, watch the equipment. Just put that down somewhere." Her bump was just enough. My grip on the polished silver edge slipped. The tray tilted violently. I tried to correct it, but the weight was too much. It didn't crash to the floor, but I fumbled it, catching the edge hard against my body. The sharp, ornate corner of the heavy silver tray slammed directly into my wrist bone. A hot, searing pain shot up my arm. It was a metallic, bruising impact. One of the heavy brass candlesticks tipped and rolled off, hitting the hardwood floor with a sickening, dull thud. The room went silent for a beat. Then, Paisley laughed, a short, sharp giggle. "Smooth, Sloane, always making an entrance." I didn't say anything. I just stared at my wrist, where a dark red welt was already beginning to rise. Angry and immediate, the throb was intense. "For heaven's sake," Delia snapped, her good humor vanishing. "Pick that up. You've probably dented the floor." I bent down, my arms screaming in protest, and retrieved the candlestick. I placed it back on the tray and walked the entire set to the sideboard I had just retrieved it from. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the vibrating shock of the impact. I turned back. Mr. Henderson was awkwardly packing his lens cap. Delia was still admiring the photo on his camera. I walked over, my voice quiet, detached. "Let me see." Mr. Henderson, bless him, looked guilty. He held up the camera. I stared at the preview screen. There they were, Grant, Delia, and Paisley, framed perfectly by the roaring fire and the stone mantel. They were smiling. They looked happy. They looked complete. There was no space where I was supposed to stand. There was no shadow indicating someone had just been sent away. Everyone was in it, except me. "It's a lovely shot, Delia," Mr. Henderson said, clearly anxious to leave. "Our best one yet," she agreed. She finally turned to me, her eyes as cold as the windows. Her smile was gone, replaced by a tight, familiar mask of impatience. "You are killing the mood. Sloane," she hissed, her voice low so Mr. Henderson wouldn't hear as he buttoned his coat. "Absolutely ruining the atmosphere." I just looked at her, the throb in my wrist a steady drumbeat. I didn't have a response. My mind, usually so quick with logistics and solutions, was empty. She misinterpreted my silence. Her eyes narrowed into a glare that was pure ice, a look I had known my entire adult life. It was a command. It was the same order, repeated for years in 1,000 different ways, for 1,000 different infractions. Fix your face. Perform. Be grateful for what you are given. Be grateful. Even for this. That look from Delia, the one commanding me to be grateful, was not new. It was the look of expectation. It was the silent reminder of my role, a role I had foolishly accepted years ago, not as a daughter, but as the practical one. I am the operations manager for this family, the one who deals in logistics, not emotions. My work at Halcyon Civic Works is clean. The inputs and outputs are clear. This, the Westbridge house, this is messy, but I have kept my own records. In my mind, I have a running ledger. It is cold, precise, and categorized. Item: the roof, 3 years ago. A winter storm tore shingles from the north side of the house. Delia called me, her voice a performance of high panic. "Sloane, it is leaking directly into the guest room. The ceiling is sagging. Grant is overwhelmed." The contractor quoted $12,000. My father's savings were, as usual, tied up. "Just this once, Sloane," Delia had whispered to me over the phone, a tone of shared conspiracy. "We'll cover you on the tax refund. You're the practical one. You understand." I made the bank transfer directly. The roof was fixed. I was never paid back. The refund, I later learned, went to a new set of patio furniture. Item: utilities. This is a recurring, unpredictable expense. The heating oil bill every winter. A surprise shortfall. The electricity bill last summer when the air conditioning ran for 3 months straight. "The bill is just astronomical," Delia would sigh, loud enough for me to hear while I was visiting. "I just don't know how we're going to manage it, and Paisley's car insurance." The implication hung in the air, heavy and wet, until I would say, "I can cover it," she would protest, weakly. "Oh, Sloane, no. Are you sure?" And I would assure her. It was easier than the tension. Item: my father's medication. This was the sharpest tool in her kit. My father has high blood pressure, and his medication is expensive, more than once. I received a call. "Sloane, darling, your father is at the pharmacy, and he's forgotten his wallet, and they won't release his prescription. He's too embarrassed to call you." A lie. He was probably in the garden, oblivious. But I would call the pharmacy and pay the $300 over the phone. When I saw him later, he would look confused. "Delia handled it," he would say, avoiding my eyes. "I'll pay you back, Sloane. He never has." The debt was not financial. It was moral. I could not refuse to pay for my father's health. Delia knew that. Item: Paisley. This is the largest, most consistent category. 4 years of private art school tuition. It's an investment in her future. Sloane, Delia had argued, as if I were a skeptical board member. She has a real gift, We have to support the arts. I supported the arts. I paid nearly $30,000 over 4 years, and when Paisley graduated, the expenditures shifted. She became a content creator, which required props. She was put on a shared credit card, one I funded for household emergencies. The emergencies became routine. Dinners at restaurants I had never heard of. New clothes for branding. Last month, I flagged a charge for $400 from a designer jewelry website. I called Paisley. She had laughed. A breezy, unapologetic sound. "Oh, that? It's for a photo shoot. Sloan, it's about creating an aesthetic. You have to spend money to make money. You know." The jewelry looked suspiciously permanent in her social media posts. Posts that were always tagged, "living my best life," and "so blessed." This is the system. It is built on her carefully constructed phrases, a script she never deviates from. Just this once. It's for the family, and the most important one, don't tell anyone. That last one was the key. Don't tell your father. It will only stress him out. Don't mention this to Paisley. She won't understand the pressure. Don't tell your friends. It's a private family matter. This isolation kept the system running, but I am an operations manager. I document everything. On my personal laptop, secured in encrypted cloud storage, is a folder titled Westbridge Accounts. It is organized by year and by recipient. Inside are the PDFs of the bank transfers, the scanned invoices from the roofer and the plumber, the screenshots of Delia's urgent, manipulative text messages, the itemized credit card statements showing Paisley's props. It is not an album of grievances. It is an archive. It is a clinical record of managed exploitation. The cost, however, was not just financial. The true cost was my own future. Last year, I was offered a promotion at Halcyon Civic Works. It was not just a title change, it was the lead logistics role for our new West Coast expansion. It meant a 40% pay increase, a director-level title, and a move to Portland, Oregon. It was everything I had worked for. I was 31 years old, and I was finally ready to build my own life, 3,000 miles away from the constant gravitational pull of Westbridge. I told my father, and he seemed genuinely happy for me. 2 days later, Delia called me. She was weeping. It was a low, controlled sob, the kind designed for maximum effect. "Sloan, I know you're excited," she began. "But your father, he's not telling you how stressed he is. His heart. He's been having episodes. He won't tell you. He doesn't want to hold you back." I froze. "What kind of episodes?" "Just pressure, dizziness. He needs stability. Sloan, he needs family. I cannot manage this house and his health by myself. Not right now." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Please, I am begging you. Don't go. Just for a little while. Stay close. Just to help me support him. For the family." I turned down the promotion. I told my bosses in Seattle that it was for personal family health reasons. My supervisor, a sharp woman I admired, looked at me with a profound, unspoken disappointment. I stayed. My father, strangely, seemed to improve immediately. He never mentioned his episodes. When I told him I had decided to stay, his relief was palpable. "Oh, Sloan, that's wonderful," he said, smiling. "Delia was so worried you were leaving. It's so much better having you close." That was the moment the fracture in my self-respect became a chasm. I was not a daughter. I was a resource. I was the emergency fund, the on-call crisis manager, the infrastructure that allowed Delia and Paisley to live their curated, beautiful lives. My success was not my own. It was a joint account they could draw from at will. My sacrifice was not noble. It was expected. It was my duty as the practical one. I stayed silent for my father. I watched him shrink in his own home, always deferring to Delia, always smoothing over her sharp edges. I thought my silence, my compliance, was a shield. I thought I was protecting him from her, absorbing the blows so he would not have to. Standing in that living room, the throb in my wrist a sickening pulse, I looked at that family, my family, posing for a portrait of lies. I realized my fundamental error in calculation. My silence was not protecting my father. It was protecting Delia. It was the insulation that allowed the rot to spread, the subsidy that funded her performance. They did not just want my money and my time. They wanted my silence, and by standing there, invisible, just outside the frame, I had become the perfect, silent donor. The pain in my wrist was sharp and clear. It was a single, focused point of clarity. The ledger was full. The accounts were unbalanced. This Thanksgiving, this year, was the final entry. My name is Sloan Mercer. I am 32 years old, and I'm an operations manager at Halcyon Civic Works. My job is logistics. I organize shelters, manage supply chains for food banks, and ensure that when a crisis hits, the trucks move, the volunteers are rostered, and the spreadsheets are accurate. I am good at it because I function best when variables are clearly defined and outcomes are measurable. My world at Halcyon is built on processes, accountability, and the quiet satisfaction of seeing a complex problem solved efficiently. My family home in Westbridge, New England, is not that world. Westbridge is the kind of town that looks designed for postcards, old colonials, a town green with a gazebo, and gas lamps that flicker on at dusk. As I drove the 2 hours from the city, the snow had already begun. It wasn't a real storm, just a persistent, wet dusting that blurred the edges of the bare trees and slicked the roads. It was the day before Thanksgiving, and the air was thick with the manufactured urgency of the holiday. I pulled into the driveway of the house I grew up in, the one my father, Grant Mercer, still lived in. It was immaculate, as always. Delia Cross, my stepmother, ensured it. The symmetrical wreaths on the double doors were perfect. The white lights strung through the box hedges were ruler straight. I cut the engine and sat for a moment, the silence of the car a brief buffer. I could see them through the front window. Delia, glamorous even when organizing throw pillows, was dressed in sharp cashmere, her blonde hair immaculate. She was pointing, directing. My father, gentle and quiet, was nodding. His shoulders slumped slightly in that familiar way that telegraphed compliance. He avoids friction. He has been avoiding it for 15 years, ever since Delia moved in. And my half-sister, Paisley, who is 24, was visible in the reflection of the window, her face illuminated by her phone, completely disengaged from the physical setup, but entirely absorbed in the digital performance of it. I sighed, grabbed the gifts from the passenger seat, and stepped out into the cold. The air smelled like wet pavement and distant wood smoke. The box in my arms was heavy, a new, professional-grade roasting pan. Their old one was warped, a fact I'd noted in September. The other bag held 3 bottles of craft apple cider from a cidery near my apartment. Something festive, something neutral, a peace offering, an entry fee. The moment I opened the door, the noise hit me. It wasn't loud, but it was dense, the clink of silver, Delia's sharp instructions, and a generic holiday jazz playlist. "Sloan, you're late," Delia said, not looking up from her task of straightening a runner on the dining table. "The photographer will be here in 20 minutes. "The snow slowed things down," I said, setting the heavy box by the kitchen doorway. "This is for the kitchen." "Fine. Put the cider in the pantry, not the fridge. It takes up too much space." She flicked her hand, a gesture of dismissal. "Paisley, stop staring at that screen and go put on the dress I laid out. Grant, are the fireplace logs arranged? I want the stacked birch look, not the messy pile." My father, already moving toward the fireplace, just nodded. "Right away, Delia." This was the tradition, not the meal, not the gratitude. The tradition was the performance, culminating in the annual Thanksgiving group photo. Every year, our neighbor, Mr. Henderson, a retiree with a passion for photography, would come over with his expensive camera. He would capture the perfect family moment. Delia would then have it professionally printed, oversized, and framed. It would be placed in the center of the living room, directly over the mantel, replacing the photo from the year before. It was an annual changing of the guard, a public declaration of continued, curated perfection. I went to the kitchen to unbox the roasting pan, needing a moment of simple physical activity. The weight of the stainless steel was satisfying. It was a good tool. I left it on the counter and returned to the living room, trying to find a place to stand where I wasn't in the way of the frantic, scripted preparations. "Sloane, you're just standing there," Delia said. "Go help your father with the logs. No, wait. You'll get dust on your sweater. Just stand by the window and look pleasant. Mr. Henderson is here." Mr. Henderson came in, stamping snow from his boots. "Happy Thanksgiving. Mercers, Delia, the light is fading fast. We should probably get this done." "Of course, Jim, we're ready." Delia clapped her hands, a sharp sound that made everyone jump to attention. "Places, everyone, Grant, center, by the fireplace, Paisley, on his left, I'll stand on his right." They assembled, my father, looking vaguely uncomfortable in a new cable-knit sweater, Paisley, now in a burgundy velvet dress, instantly striking a pose, one hand on her hip, her chin tilted. Delia, radiant, the absolute center of gravity, smoothing her sweater over her non-existent hips. I moved to stand next to Paisley, the logical empty spot. Delia held up a hand. "Stop, Jim, wait, the composition is off." She stared, her head tilted. Paisley looked annoyed. "Mom, it's fine. My angle is good." "No, it's too crowded on that side." Delia looked at me. Her eyes scanned me. From my practical boots to my simple wool sweater, I wasn't in velvet. I hadn't received the wardrobe memo. "Sloane," she said, her voice suddenly bright and syrupy. "Darling, the mantel looks so bare behind us. Those brass candlesticks on the sideboard. Could you grab them? We need them in the shot. Just arrange them quickly." I looked at the sideboard. It was across the room. I looked back at the family. Perfectly posed. "You want me to get them now?" "Yes, quickly. We're losing the light." I turned and walked across the room. I heard Mr. Henderson murmur, "Should I wait for—" "It's fine. Jim?" Delia's voice cut in, sharp and final. "She's just fixing the background. Get ready. 1, 2. I picked up the heavy, ornate silver tray that held the 4 unlit brass candlesticks. It was my grandmother's. It was heavy. As I turned back, my steps faltering, I heard the click and saw the flash reflect off the glass of the window. They had taken it. "Oh, that's perfect," Delia chirped. "That's the one. Jim, let me see." I stood frozen in the middle of the living room, holding the heavy tray. Paisley was already off the stage, her phone back in her hand. My father was looking at his shoes, rubbing the back of his neck. Mr. Henderson was fiddling with his camera, showing the preview screen to Delia. A cold numbness started in my chest. I walked toward them, the tray still in my hands. "You took it already?" Delia didn't look at me. She was beaming at the tiny screen. "It's wonderful. Paisley, you look divine. Grant, so handsome." As I got closer, trying to hand off the tray, I leaned forward. Delia made an irritated noise and stepped back, bumping my arm. "Sloane, watch the equipment. Just put that down somewhere." Her bump was just enough. My grip on the polished silver edge slipped. The tray tilted violently. I tried to correct it, but the weight was too much. It didn't crash to the floor. But I fumbled it, catching the edge hard against my body. The sharp, ornate corner of the heavy silver tray slammed directly into my wrist bone. A hot, searing pain shot up my arm. It was a metallic, bruising impact. One of the heavy brass candlesticks tipped and rolled off, hitting the hardwood floor with a sickening, dull thud. The room went silent for a beat. Then, Paisley laughed, a short, sharp giggle. "Smooth, Sloane, always making an entrance." I didn't say anything. I just stared at my wrist, where a dark red welt was already beginning to rise, angry and immediate. The throb was intense. "For heaven's sake," Delia snapped, her good humor vanishing. "Pick that up. You've probably dented the floor." I bent down, my arms screaming in protest, and retrieved the candlestick. I placed it back on the tray and walked the entire set to the sideboard I had just retrieved it from. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the vibrating shock of the impact. I turned back. Mr. Henderson was awkwardly packing his lens cap. Delia was still admiring the photo on his camera. I walked over, my voice quiet, detached. "Let me see." Mr. Henderson, bless him, looked guilty. He held up the camera. I stared at the preview screen. There they were, Grant, Delia, and Paisley, framed perfectly by the roaring fire and the stone mantel. They were smiling. They looked happy. They looked complete. There was no space where I was supposed to stand. There was no shadow indicating someone had just been sent away. Everyone was in it, except me. "It's a lovely shot, Delia," Mr. Henderson said, clearly anxious to leave. "Our best one yet," she agreed. She finally turned to me, her eyes as cold as the windows. Her smile was gone, replaced by a tight, familiar mask of impatience. "You are killing the mood." "Sloane," she hissed, her voice low so Mr. Henderson wouldn't hear as he buttoned his coat. "Absolutely ruining the atmosphere." I just looked at her, the throb in my wrist a steady drumbeat. I didn't have a response. My mind, usually so quick with logistics and solutions, was empty. She misinterpreted my silence. Her eyes narrowed into a glare that was pure ice, a look I had known my entire adult life. It was a command. It was the same order, repeated for years in 1,000 different ways, for 1,000 different infractions. Fix your face. Perform. Be grateful for what you are given. Be grateful, even for this. That look from Delia, the one commanding me to be grateful, was not new. It was the look of expectation. It was the silent reminder of my role, a role I had foolishly accepted years ago. Not as a daughter, but as the practical one. I am the operations manager for this family, the one who deals in logistics, not emotions. My work at Halcyon Civic Works is clean. The inputs and outputs are clear. This, the Westbridge house, this is messy, but I have kept my own records. In my mind, I have a running ledger. It is cold, precise, and categorized. Item: the roof, 3 years ago. A winter storm tore shingles from the north side of the house. Delia called me, her voice a performance of high panic. "Sloane, it is leaking directly into the guest room. The ceiling is sagging. Grant is overwhelmed." The contractor quoted $12,000. My father's savings were, as usual, tied up. "Just this once. Sloane," Delia had whispered to me over the phone, a tone of shared conspiracy. "We'll cover you on the tax refund. You're the practical one. You understand." I made the bank transfer directly. The roof was fixed. I was never paid back. The refund, I later learned, went to a new set of patio furniture. Item: utilities. This is a recurring, unpredictable expense. The heating oil bill every winter. A surprise shortfall. The electricity bill last summer when the air conditioning ran for 3 months straight. "The bill is just astronomical," Delia would sigh, loud enough for me to hear while I was visiting. "I just don't know how we're going to manage it, and Paisley's car insurance." The implication hung in the air, heavy and wet, until I would say, "I can cover it." She would protest, weakly, "Oh, Sloane, no. Are you sure?" And I would assure her. It was easier than the tension. Item: my father's medication. This was the sharpest tool in her kit. My father has high blood pressure, and his medication is expensive. More than once, I received a call. "Sloane, darling, your father is at the pharmacy, and he's forgotten his wallet, and they won't release his prescription. He's too embarrassed to call you." A lie. He was probably in the garden, oblivious, but I would call the pharmacy and pay the $300 over the phone. When I saw him later, he would look confused. "Delia handled it," he would say, avoiding my eyes. "I'll pay you back. Sloane, he never has." The debt was not financial. It was moral. I could not refuse to pay for my father's health. Delia knew that. Item: Paisley. This is the largest, most consistent category, 4 years of private art school tuition. It's an investment in her future. Sloan, Delia had argued, as if I were a skeptical board member. She has a real gift. We have to support the arts. I supported the arts. I paid nearly $30,000 over 4 years. And when Paisley graduated, the expenditures shifted. She became a content creator, which required props. She was put on a shared credit card, one I funded for household emergencies. The emergencies became routine. Dinners at restaurants I had never heard of. New clothes for branding. Last month, I flagged a charge for $400 from a designer jewelry website. I called Paisley. She had laughed. A breezy, unapologetic sound. "Oh, that? It's for a photo shoot." "Sloan, it's about creating an aesthetic. You have to spend money to make money. You know." The jewelry looked suspiciously permanent in her social media posts that were always tagged "living my best life" and "so blessed." This is the system. It is built on her carefully constructed phrases, a script she never deviates from. Just this once. It's for the family, and the most important one. Don't tell anyone. That last one was the key. Don't tell your father. It will only stress him out. Don't mention this to Paisley. She won't understand the pressure. Don't tell your friends. It's a private family matter. This isolation kept the system running, but I am an operations manager. I document everything. On my personal laptop, secured in encrypted cloud storage, is a folder titled Westbridge Accounts. It is organized by year and by recipient. Inside are the PDFs of the bank transfers, the scanned invoices from the roofer and the plumber, the screenshots of Delia's urgent, manipulative text messages, the itemized credit card statements showing Paisley's props. It is not an album of grievances. It is an archive. It is a clinical record of managed exploitation. The cost, however, was not just financial. The true cost was my own future. Last year, I was offered a promotion at Halcyon Civic Works. It was not just a title change. It was the lead logistics role for our new West Coast expansion. It meant a 40% pay increase, a director-level title, and a move to Portland, Oregon. It was everything I had worked for. I was 31 years old, and I was finally ready to build my own life, 3,000 miles away from the constant gravitational pull of Westbridge. I told my father, and he seemed genuinely happy for me. 2 days later, Delia called me. She was weeping. It was a low, controlled sob, the kind designed for maximum effect. "Sloan, I know you're excited," she began. "But your father, he's not telling you how stressed he is. His heart, he's been having episodes. He won't tell you. He doesn't want to hold you back." I froze. "What kind of episodes?" "Just pressure, dizziness. He needs stability. Sloan, he needs family. I cannot manage this house and his health by myself. Not right now." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Please, I am begging you, don't go. Just for a little while. Stay close, just to help me support him, for the family." I turned down the promotion. I told my bosses in Seattle that it was for personal family health reasons. My supervisor, a sharp woman I admired, looked at me with a profound, unspoken disappointment. I stayed. My father, strangely, seemed to improve immediately. He never mentioned his episodes. When I told him I had decided to stay, his relief was palpable. "Oh, Sloan, that's wonderful," he said, smiling. "Delia was so worried you were leaving. It's so much better having you close." That was the moment the fracture in my self-respect became a chasm. I was not a daughter. I was a resource. I was the emergency fund, the on-call crisis manager, the infrastructure that allowed Delia and Paisley to live their curated, beautiful lives. My success was not my own. It was a joint account they could draw from at will. My sacrifice was not noble. It was expected. It was my duty as the practical one. I stayed silent for my father. I watched him shrink in his own home, always deferring to Delia, always smoothing over her sharp edges. I thought my silence, my compliance, was a shield. I thought I was protecting him from her, absorbing the blows so he would not have to. Standing in that living room, the throb in my wrist a sickening pulse, I looked at that family, my family, posing for a portrait of lies. I realized my fundamental error in calculation. My silence was not protecting my father. It was protecting Delia. It was the insulation that allowed the rot to spread, the subsidy that funded her performance. They did not just want my money and my time. They wanted my silence. And by standing there, invisible, just outside the frame, I had become the perfect, silent donor. The pain in my wrist was sharp and clear. It was a single, focused point of clarity. The ledger was full. The accounts were unbalanced. This Thanksgiving, this year, was the final entry. Mr. Henderson finally bustled out the door, muttering his thanks, leaving a vacuum of cold air that was quickly filled by Delia's brittle energy. The living room felt hot and overlit. My wrist was a dull, heavy ache, a physical anchor to the humiliation. "Well," Delia announced, clapping her hands again. The sound was like a gavel. "The performance is over. Time for the real gratitude. Dinner is served." This was the second act of the play. We moved to the dining room. The table was suffocatingly perfect. Every plate was centered, every glass polished. Delia had, of course, arranged the seating. My father at one end, she at the other, the seat of power. Paisley was placed near the center, optimal for her social media angles. My place card, which I had seen earlier next to my father, was gone. "Sloane, you're down there." Delia pointed to the far end, near the kitchen swing door, next to an empty chair used as a buffer, the Siberia seat. I did not comment. I just walked the length of the table and sat down. The message was clear. I was being punished for my sulking, for ruining the photo. My father watched me take my seat. His eyes met mine for a fraction of a second, filled with a familiar, weary apology, before he looked down at his empty plate. He began meticulously folding his napkin in his lap, a small, repetitive motion of avoidance. "Now," Delia said, raising her glass of wine, "before we eat, we honor the Westbridge tradition, the gratitude circle." This was her invention. It was not about gratitude. It was about fealty. The rule was that you had to thank the person who prepared the meal and organized the day. You had to thank Delia. It was a required script. "Grant, darling, you start." My father cleared his throat. He looked at his wife, his face attempting a warm smile. "Delia, what a day. The house looks like a magazine. Thank you for all the incredible work you put in. The food smells incredible. We are all so lucky to have you organizing us." Delia beamed, a regal, accepting nod. "Thank you. Grant?" "Paisley?" Paisley, who had already propped her phone against a water glass, paused her recording. "Mom, seriously, epic. The aesthetic is perfect. Everyone online is obsessed with the centerpiece. Thank you for making it so perfect." "My pleasure, darling. It is all for you." Her eyes swiveled to me, down the long expanse of polished mahogany. The spotlight was on. I was expected to complete the circuit, to apologize for my earlier disruption by delivering the most glowing praise, to get back in line. I held my water glass. The ache in my bruised wrist pulsed. I looked at Delia. "I am grateful for the sanitation workers who are working today so we can have this meal," I said, my voice clear and steady. "I am grateful for the utility crews on call, for the nurses at the local clinic, and for the volunteers at the Halcyon Food Bank who are feeding 500 people in the city right now." The silence that followed was heavy and absolute. Paisley froze, her thumb hovering over her phone. My father stared intently at the grain of the wood table, his shoulders hunching. Delia's smile did not flicker. It just became hard, like porcelain. How very civic-minded. Sloane, a lovely sentiment. Her tone was venomous. "Let us eat." The meal began. The script had been broken, and the consequences were immediate. My father carved the turkey. The platter was passed. "Grant, what a beautiful bird." Delia cooed. The platter went to Paisley. She took a slice of white meat and passed it to Delia. Delia took her portion and handed the heavy platter back to Paisley. Paisley, did you want more? Oh, sure. The platter, which should have continued down the table to me, stopped. It was placed in the center of the table, just out of my reach. This was how Delia operated, not with overt refusal, but with plausible deniability, the accidental oversight. The mashed potatoes followed. They went from Grant to Paisley to Delia and stopped. The green bean casserole, the gravy boat, the stuffing. Each dish made the same truncated journey. My plate remained empty. I watched them eat. My father ate quickly, his gaze fixed on his food. He knew. He had to know. He saw the dishes stop. He saw my empty plate. But intervening would mean confronting Delia, and he had optimized his entire life to avoid that specific conflict. His silence was his survival. Meanwhile, Paisley had started her live stream. Her phone was active, the little red light glowing. Hey everyone, happy Thanksgiving from the perfect family dinner. Her voice was high and bubbly, a different person from the one who sat silently at the table. Look at this spread my mom made. She is literally Martha Stewart. She panned the camera. I watched the screen on her phone from my distant seat. The angle was tight. It showed the centerpiece. It showed Delia, smiling and raising her glass. It showed my father, captured mid-bite. It showed her own face, glowing under a filter. She carefully, expertly, kept the end of the table, my end, my empty plate, out of the frame. I did not exist in her perfect family dinner live stream, just as I did not exist in the photograph. I sat there for perhaps 10 minutes. The sound of silver scraping china was amplified in my ears. The smell of the food I was not eating, the thyme, the rich gravy, was overwhelming. Sloane, you are not eating, Delia observed, her voice dripping with false concern. Is something wrong with the food? I was not passed any, I said simply. My father flinched. Paisley stopped her recording. Oh, heavens, Delia cried, her hand flying to her chest. We just forgot. We were so caught up in the conversation. Grant, Paisley, why did you not pass the food down? My father mumbled. Sorry, I thought. Honestly, Delia said, sighing dramatically, picking up the now lukewarm platter of turkey. Sometimes I feel I have to manage every single thing. She did not hand the platter to my father to pass. She stood up, walked the length of the table, and placed the platter in front of me with a thud, then the mashed potatoes, then the gravy. There, she said, as if to a difficult child. Are you happy now? I looked at the cold food. Thank you. I put a single slice of turkey on my plate and a spoonful of potatoes. I had no appetite. The knot in my stomach was solid. The dinner resumed. The conversation stilted. Paisley went back to her phone. My father nursed his wine. And then, Mr. Henderson returned. He knocked lightly on the dining room door, poking his head in. Sorry to interrupt. Folks, Delia, I just wanted to drop off the memory card. I got that perfect shot. And I know you like to have the file right away for your project. Delia lit up. The failure of the gratitude ritual was forgotten. The performance was back on. Jim, how thoughtful. Come in. Come in. No, I cannot stay. Just wanted to hand this over. He passed her the small plastic card. It is the first file on there. Thanksgiving group. A real keeper. It is the one. I know it, Delia said. I pushed my chair back and stood up. The room fell quiet again. Mr. Henderson? I said, my voice sounding too loud. He turned, already halfway out the door. Yes, Sloane? Before you go, I think we missed one. We never took the actual group photo. The one with everyone. Mr. Henderson looked confused. He glanced at Delia. I looked directly at my stepmother. The throb in my wrist was back, sharp and insistent. We should take another one with all four of us. Delia's face tightened. She let out a small, tinkling laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "Sloane, darling, do not be dramatic. We got the shot. It is perfect." "It is not perfect," I said. "I am not in it." "We were losing the light," she snapped, her patience gone. "The light is fine. We have lamps. Let's just take one more." "No," her voice was flat. "We are not dragging Jim back in. The moment has passed. We will try again next year." She turned to Mr. Henderson and smiled brightly. "Thank you so much. Jim, happy Thanksgiving." She was dismissing me, in front of a neighbor. The humiliation was public. "Why?" I pressed, my voice low. "Why can you not take one picture with your entire family?" Delia turned back to me, her eyes glittering. She stepped close, lowering her voice. "Because the picture is for the club exhibit, and the exhibit requires joy. It requires people who look like they belong." She smiled, a razor-thin line. "We can take another picture when you finally learn how to smile. Sloane, when you stop bringing this heavy energy into the room." She turned and walked back to the head of the table. "Mr. Henderson gave me a look of deep pity and then disappeared, closing the door behind him. I stood by my chair, my plate of cold food untouched. I picked up my plate and my water glass. I walked the length of the table, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood floor. I pushed open the swinging door to the kitchen and let it flap shut behind me. The kitchen was an explosion of chaos. The opposite of the curated dining room, it was hot, humid, and smelled intensely of cooked poultry, melted butter, sage, and the sharp, metallic tang of the new roasting pan I had bought, which was sitting in the sink. Pots were piled everywhere. Dishes covered every counter. It was a war zone. I stood in the middle of it, the heat and the smells pressing in on me. The door swinging shut muffled the dining room sounds, replacing them with the loud hum of the refrigerator. I scraped the cold, untouched food into the trash can. I put the plate in the overflowing sink. I just stood there, my hands braced on the cool edge of the stainless steel sink. My head bowed. I was breathing hard. I was trying to get the operations manager back in control, to push down the trembling, emotional part. The door swung open so hard it banged against the pantry wall. Delia stood there. Her face was no longer smiling. It was a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. She shut the door firmly behind her. Enclosing us, the room suddenly felt tiny, airless. "What do you think you are doing?" she hissed. "Cleaning my plate." "Do not play games with me. You, in there." She pointed toward the dining room. "Embarrassing me, embarrassing your father, questioning me in front of Jim Henderson, making a scene about a photograph. I just wanted to be in the family picture. Delia." "You are not family when you act like this," she spat. "You are a guest, a sullen, ungrateful guest who comes into my house, the house I maintain, the house I make beautiful, and you bring your misery with you." "I paid for the roof on this house," I said. The words were out before I could stop them. They were cold and factual. Her eyes widened, just for a second, in pure shock. Then the fury redoubled. "How dare you? How dare you throw that in my face? You did that for your father. You did that because it was your duty. It was $12,000. "Stop it!" she shrieked, taking a step closer. The air between us was electric, vibrating. I could smell her perfume, an expensive, sharp floral scent, mixing with the smell of the turkey. "You are just like your mother, morose, difficult, always counting the cost." "Do not talk about my mother. I will talk about whoever I want in my own home." She was chest to chest with me now, her face inches from mine. "You think you are better than us, coming here from the city with your job and your quiet judgments. You walk in here with that face." She jabbed a finger toward my chin. "Do not make that face, not today. You are ruining the holiday. You are ruining it for your father. You are ruining it for Paisley. You are ruining it for me. All you had to do was sit there and eat and smile and be grateful, but you cannot even do that." I did not move. I did not back up. I just looked at her. The throb in my wrist now a fire racing up my arm. I said nothing. My silence broke her. "Smile," she commanded. I stared at her. I said, "Smile." And then she hit me. It was not a small tap. It was a full, open-palmed slap across my left cheek. Her rings connected with my cheekbone. The force of it snapped my head to the side, knocking me off balance. I stumbled back against the counter, my hip hitting the new roasting pan in the sink. The heavy metal pan, unstable and full of soapy water, crashed from the sink onto the tile floor. The sound was deafening, a metallic, echoing boom, followed by the splash of greasy water. For a single, horrifying second, there was no sound at all, just the high-pitched ringing in my ear. Then, the sensations flooded in, the sting on my face, a sharp, blooming heat, the smell of the metal from the pan, the cold water splashing onto my socks. And from the dining room, through the closed door, I heard it. Paisley laughed, a high-pitched, musical sound. My father's voice, muffled, replied, "That is a very funny story, sweetheart." They had not heard the pan. They had not heard the slap. The performance was continuing, uninterrupted. I slowly turned my head back to look at Delia. She was breathing hard, her hands still raised slightly, her chest heaving. She looked shocked, not at what she had done, but at the noise. The red mark of her hand was already branding my skin. I could feel it swell. She saw it too. She saw the bright red mark on my face, and her expression shifted from rage to cunning. "Now, look what you made me do," she whispered. "You pushed me." My ear was ringing. It was a high-pitched, thin sound, like a faulty electrical wire. The hot metallic smell of the roasting pan and the greasy water on the floor mixed with the cloying floral of Delia's perfume. My cheek was on fire, a deep, radiating burn that had already begun to throb in time with my pulse. I did not cry. Crying is what a child does. Crying is an appeal for comfort. I was 32 years old, and there was no comfort to be found in this room. My first, automatic instinct was to stabilize. At Halcyon, when a supply chain breaks, you do not panic. You assess the damage, you stop the bleeding, and you create a new logistical plan. I took one deep, controlled breath, in through the nose, out through the mouth. The air was thick and humid. I took another. The ringing in my ear subsided, replaced by the muffled sound of my father's voice and Paisley's laughter from the dining room. They were still eating. They were oblivious. Delia was watching me, her chest still heaving. Her face was pale, her eyes wide. She was calculating. She was assessing my reaction, trying to determine her next move. She was waiting for me to scream, to break down, to give her the ammunition to paint me as hysterical. I did none of those things. I kept my back to her. I stared at the dark, reflective surface of the microwave oven above the stove. I could see my own distorted image, my hair, slightly frizzy from the kitchen steam, the outline of my jaw, and the faint, dark bloom on my left cheek. It was not a child's face looking back at me. It was not the face of a teenager who could be sent to her room. It was the face of an adult who paid for the roof, an adult who had turned down a career for this. I am an adult. I am not a character in her play. I am a person. This clarity was cold and sharp. It cut through the pain and the humiliation. I slipped my hand into my pocket and took out my phone. My movements were slow, deliberate. I did not turn to face her. I unlocked the screen with my thumb. I swiped up, opened the utility folder, and tapped the voice memo icon. I pressed the red button. The phone began recording the ambient sound of the kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant clinking of forks, and Delia's ragged breathing. Only then did I turn to face her. I held the phone in my hand, screen dark, but the microphone active, pointed toward her. "You pushed me," she whispered again, trying the words out, testing the narrative. "You came at me. You were screaming." I just looked at her. I said nothing. My silence was a wall. I let the recorder capture it. Her eyes darted to the phone, then back to my face. A new kind of fear, colder and more practical, entered her expression. She understood. She dropped the narrative. Her voice changed. It became low, heavy, and full of a familiar reptilian threat. "You will go back out there," she hissed, "and you will sit down, you will eat your dinner, and you will smile. You will not, under any circumstances, embarrass your father. You will not say one word about this." I remained silent. I let the phone record her command. "Do you understand me, Sloane?" she threatened. "Don't you dare ruin his holiday." I turned my back to her again, ending the conversation. I walked past the sink, past the puddle of greasy water, and retrieved the coat I had left on a hook by the back door. I slid my arms into it. I picked up my purse and my car keys. She scrambled to block the door. "What are you doing? I told you you are not leaving. You are not making a scene." "I am going for a walk," I said. My voice was calm, almost flat. "It is snowing. You cannot just walk out. People will see you." "Then I suggest you move," I said. Before she could react, I raised my phone. I turned on the flash. The kitchen was illuminated in a harsh, sudden light. I took a picture of the fallen roasting pan. I took a picture of the greasy water splashed across the tile. I turned and took a picture of the clock on the kitchen wall, the one shaped like a rooster. 7:14 p.m., November 23rd. Then, I turned the phone, switched to the front-facing camera, and in the cold, unforgiving light of the flash, I took a picture of my face. The welt was no longer a dull bloom. It was a bright, angry red, with the distinct imprinted outline of her fingers and the white mark where her ring had struck my cheekbone. It was clear. It was irrefutable. It was data. "You," she stammered, her voice failing. She looked at the phone, then at my face, and she finally understood. This was not an argument. This was documentation. I pushed past her. She did not try to stop me again. I opened the back door and stepped out onto the small, dark porch. The cold was a slap, a clean and welcome contrast to the humid rage of the kitchen. The snow was falling steadily now, thick, wet flakes that melted as they hit the pavement of the walkway. The air was silent, muffled by the snow, smelling of pine and cold earth. I took a deep breath, and it felt like the first real breath I had taken all day. I stood on the top step, my hands shoved deep in my coat pockets. My left hand was clenching my phone. My right hand was beginning to shake. It was not fear. It was adrenaline. It was the body's physical reaction to violence, a chemical surge that had nowhere to go. I looked down and watched my fingers tremble. Fascinated by the disconnect, I was calm. My body was in shock. The porch light next door flicked on, illuminating the falling snow in a golden cone. Mrs. Keating's house. She was my mother's friend. Years ago. A retired librarian who saw everything in Westbridge. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. As I did, the screen lit up with a new text message. It was from an unknown number, a blocked, anonymous sender. I opened it. The message was 6 words. "You should know better than this." A chill, entirely separate from the cold air, went down my spine. It was Delia, or it was Paisley, instructed by Delia. It was a warning. It was the next step in the script. I was the one who was out of line. I was the one who needed to know better. The narrative was already being written. I heard a door open and close, the soft crunch of boots on snow. "Sloane, honey, is that you?" I looked up. Mrs. Keating, a small, bird-like woman wrapped in a heavy cardigan, was standing at the edge of her driveway, holding a garbage bag. She was squinting at me through the snow. "Hello, Mrs. Keating," I said. My voice sounded strange in the quiet. "Goodness, child, what are you doing out here without a hat? It is Thanksgiving." She took a few steps closer, into the edge of my own porch light, her eyes fixed on my face. Her friendly, neighborly expression dissolved. She stopped. She dropped the garbage bag into the snow. "Oh, my dear," she whispered. She did not ask what happened. She did not ask if I had fallen. She just saw. She walked up the steps and, without a word, put her small, warm hand on my arm, my shaking, adrenalized arm. "You come inside with me, right now." "I do not want to interrupt your dinner, Mrs. Keating." "Nonsense. My family left hours ago. I'm just cleaning up. Come." She led me, like a child, across the small patch of snowy lawn and into her side door, into her kitchen. It was the antithesis of the Mercer house. It was small, warm, and smelled like cinnamon, baked apples, and old, good quality wood. There was a radio playing classical music. Quietly, a half-eaten pie sat on the counter. "Sit down," she ordered, pointing to a wooden chair at her small kitchen table. I sat. I felt suddenly, overwhelmingly exhausted. She disappeared for a moment and came back with a clean dish towel wrapped around a bag of frozen peas. She did not ask. She just placed it gently against my burning cheek. I winced. The cold was a sharp, perfect relief. "Hold that," she said. She went to the kettle. "I am making you tea." We sat in silence for a minute. The only sounds were the quiet orchestra on the radio and the whistle of the kettle beginning to rise. "It is not the first time, is it?" she said. It was not a question. I looked at her. I did not have the energy to lie, to protect them. "No." She nodded, her lips a thin, tight line. "I have heard the shouting. Sloane, we all have. We just... You hope it is just noise." She looked out her kitchen window, which faced my own. "She has a temper. That one. Always has. All flash. No substance." She poured the hot water into a mug. "She likes to perform, likes to be the queen." Mrs. Keating sat down across from me. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, the librarian who knew where the forbidden books were kept. "I do not like to meddle, Sloane, but you know, these new doorbell cameras, they are so sensitive. Mine," she pointed with her chin toward her front door. "I had it installed last year after those teenagers were stealing packages. It picks up everything." She paused, letting the implications settle. I held the bag of peas to my face, my mind suddenly racing, shifting from logistics to strategy. "Your doorbell?" "Yes, it is a wide-angle lens. It has night vision. It is aimed right at my walkway." She took a sip of her own tea. "But the thing is, to see my walkway, it has to look right across your driveway. It films your side porch. It films directly into your kitchen window when the lights are on." I stopped breathing. The kitchen window. The one Delia had stood in front of. The one I had been facing. "It records on motion. You see," Mrs. Keating continued, her eyes sharp. "And it records audio if the sound is loud enough. A shout. A door slamming. A pan crashing to the floor. A shriek." "I was just looking at the footage before I came out," she said, her voice neutral. "Someone, or something, made a terrible racket over there. About 10 minutes ago, a big crash, followed by some very clear, very angry words." I stared at her, the world, which had been a chaotic, painful blur, snapped into hyperfocus. I was no longer an operations manager. I was a strategist. The anonymous text, Delia's threat, my father's silence, Paisley's performance, my own photographs of my face. And now this. An objective, third-party witness, a digital file, a clear recording of the event, from the outside looking in. They could say I was hysterical. They could say I fell. They could say I attacked her. But they could not argue with a time-stamped, wide-angle video from a neighbor's security camera. A new, cold, and powerful energy moved through me. It displaced the adrenaline. It displaced the pain. It was purpose. Mrs. Keating watched my expression change. A small, thin smile touched her lips. She does love her perfect pictures. Does Delia, that big one she puts up every year. I looked down at the bag of frozen peas, melting against my skin. I thought of the photograph that Mr. Henderson had taken, the one Delia had called perfect, the one with everyone in it, except me, the one that erased me. "If they want a perfect picture," I said, my voice quiet, I am going to show them the other side of it. Mrs. Keating did not hesitate. Her kitchen table, cluttered with pie plates and mail, became a command center. She turned her laptop, an older model, toward me. The app is always running, she said, clicking a desktop icon. It stores the last 48 hours of high-priority motion clips in the cloud. I pay the extra $3.99 a month for it. She found the timestamp, 7:13 p.m. The clip was labeled Loud Sound, Motion Detected. Here we are, she said. She double-clicked. The screen filled with a wide-angle, slightly distorted view of her own dark walkway, but the motion sensor had illuminated the main area of the recording, my family's side porch, and the large kitchen window right next to it. The lights were on, turning the window into a brightly lit stage. We were visible, two figures, distorted by the angle and the glass, but unmistakably me and Delia. Mrs. Keating turned up the volume. The audio was tinny, scratchy from the microphone's distance, but it was horrifyingly clear. Ruining the holiday, all you had to do was sit there and eat and smile and be grateful. Delia's high, sharp voice cut through the digital hiss. I watched myself, a silent figure, absorbing the tirade. "Stop it!" Delia's voice shrieked. "Do not talk about my mother." My own voice, low and sharp. "I will talk about whoever I want in my own home. You are not family when you act like this." And then, the critical, damning word, the one I had forgotten in the shock. "Smile." Delia's recorded voice commanded. I said, "Smile." On the screen. I watched the figure of my stepmother, Delia, raise her arm. I saw her hand connect with the side of my head. I saw my own figure stumble back, hitting the counter. The video feed shook slightly, the camera's microphone overwhelmed by the sudden, deafening crash of the roasting pan hitting the tile floor. The video clip was 1 minute and 12 seconds long. Mrs. Keating and I sat in the warm, apple-scented kitchen, the silence thick. "Well," she said, her voice dry, "that is quite the production." My mind was no longer shaking. It was working. "Mrs. Keating," I said, my voice all business. "I need a copy of that file, right now." "Of course, dear." She was already clicking. "We can export it. I will email it to you." "No," I held up my hand. "Email is not secure. This needs to be a hard transfer. Do you have a USB drive?" She rummaged in a drawer full of pens and rubber bands and produced a small 8-gigabyte drive. "Will this do?" "Perfectly." I watched her navigate the interface. Download clip, save to desktop, drag file to the drive icon. The progress bar filled in 3 seconds. She ejected the drive and handed it to me. It was warm from her hand. "That is one," I said, slipping the drive into my jeans pocket. "Now, send the file to your personal email. From there, I want you to upload it to a new, secure cloud folder, which I'm going to create for you. Do not download it to your desktop. Just keep it in the cloud. That is 2. She nodded, her fingers flying. "And 3? "My own archive," I said. I pulled out my phone and tethered my laptop, which was in my purse. I opened my encrypted Westbridge accounts folder in the cloud. I created a new subfolder. Thanksgiving event. I uploaded the picture of my face. I uploaded the picture of the fallen pan. I uploaded the picture of the clock. I uploaded the audio file I had recorded in the kitchen, the one containing her threats after the slap. And when Mrs. Keating's file arrived in my inbox, I uploaded the video. 3 copies, 3 locations, a local drive, my personal cloud, and a third-party cloud. The logistical triangle. Secure, redundant. "Thank you, Mrs. Keating. You may have just saved my life." "Nonsense, child," she sniffed, turning back to the laptop. "I am just a librarian. I believe in documenting the truth. Now, what is your next move?" "A lawyer." I took the bag of peas off my face. The swelling was still bad, but the burning had subsided into a dull, heavy throb. "I need to call my lawyer." "On Thanksgiving?" Arya Nolan does not take holidays off if the fight is good enough. I went to her living room for privacy. Arya Nolan was not, technically, my lawyer. She was a lawyer I had worked with through Halcyon, a sharp, tireless civil rights attorney who specialized in labor disputes and, as she put it, cases of extreme bastardry. She operated in the next town over, far from the influence of Westbridge social circles. She answered on the second ring. "Sloane? This had better be interesting." "Happy Thanksgiving. Arya, how do you feel about adult assault?" There was a pause. "I feel," she said slowly, "like you need to be more specific. Are you safe?" "Yes, I am at a neighbor's house. The assault occurred at 7:14 p.m. The assailant was my stepmother, Delia Cross." "Sloane." "I have video," I said, cutting her off, "and audio, and high-resolution photos of the injury, time-stamped." The entire energy on the line shifted. "Okay," Arya's voice was sharp, all business. "Tactical log. 1. Your health. I want a medical examination. Go to the urgent care in Bristol, not the Westbridge Clinic. Get seen for a facial contusion and possible wrist injury from a separate incident. Do not tell them it was an assault unless they press. Tell them you had an accidental impact. We want a clean medical record of the injury, not a messy domestic dispute report we cannot control. This is about documentation, not immediate police action." "Got it. Bristol Urgent Care." 2. The report. Tomorrow morning, you will go to the Westbridge Police Station. You will file a report for adult assault. You will use those specific words. Adult assault. You are not a child. This is not child abuse. This is not a family squabble. This is a specific, chargeable offense. Give them the facts. Do not give them the video, not yet. Just give them the narrative. Get the report filed. I want a paper trail. I want a case number. Okay, file the report. 3. The data. You mentioned you have other files, the financial ones. Years of them, I said. Good. Your job tonight is to consolidate. I know your system. I want you to go through that archive. Every receipt, every transfer, every email, tag and index everything. I want a clear balance sheet. Funds transferred to Grant Mercer. Funds paid for Paisley Mercer. Household capital improvements paid by Sloane Mercer. I want it clean, organized, and indefensible. I can do that, I said. My mind was already in the archive, seeing the PDFs, the JPEGs, the Westbridge accounts folder. I remember, she said. Arya's advice. Sloane, now and forever, do not explode, do not get emotional, do not yell. They will paint you as hysterical. You are an operations manager. They want a performance? You give them a spreadsheet. You fight with documents. You drown them in their own receipts. A cold, powerful calm settled over me. This was my language. Drown them in receipts. Got it. Finally, what is the desired outcome? Sloane, what is the win? Do you want her arrested? Do you want a restraining order? Do you want your money back? I thought for a moment. I looked through the doorway at Mrs. Keating, who was watching me with a worried, bird-like intensity. I thought of the photograph hanging over the mantel, the one I was not in. I thought of the humiliation, the years of being erased, of paying for the privilege of my own exclusion. They are having an event, I said. This Friday, Black Friday, Delia is chairing a Thanksgiving family photo exhibit at the Westbridge Country Club. It is a fundraiser. She is using the photo Mr. Henderson took tonight, the one I am not in. It is her centerpiece. Arya was silent for a long moment. I could practically hear her smiling. Oh, that is rich, she whispered. That is the venue. That is the target. She wants to show off her perfect family, I said, my voice quiet. She wants to hang that picture in public. Then we will provide context, Arya replied, her voice hardening. We will juxtapose her performance with your documentation. The photo is the lie, your face, your bank statements, and that video are the truth. We make the lie the anchor for the truth. How? You get me that timeline. Create a single, Simple document. Thanksgiving timeline. 6:50 p.m. Sloan Mercer excluded from family photograph, per Delia Cross's instruction. 7:10 p.m. Sloan Mercer isolated in kitchen. 7:14 p.m. Delia Cross commits adult assault. 7:15 p.m. Guests in dining room are documented laughing, unaware. 7:20 p.m. Sloan Mercer receives threatening text message. Make it a one-sheet, clean, factual, irrefutable. Combine that with the financial summary. And, Sloan? Yes? Do not go back to that house tonight. Sleep at a hotel. Send me the bill. I hung up. I was no longer a victim. I was an operative. I walked back into the kitchen. Mrs. Keating, I need to go to the urgent care in Bristol. I will drive you, she said, already grabbing her keys. No, I said. I can drive, but I need one more favor. Tomorrow, that photograph, the one over their mantel. The new one is not there yet, dear. It is just the file. They will hang it tomorrow morning, before the event. Even better, I said. I need a picture of it. The moment it goes public, the moment it is hanging in that exhibit. Mrs. Keating smiled. A thin, sharp, librarian's smile. I am on the decorating committee for that exhibit. I will be there at 9 a.m. sharp, with my phone. You will have your picture. I left her house, the USB drive heavy in my pocket. I did not go to my car. I walked down the snowy driveway and stood on the sidewalk, looking at my family's home. The lights were on. The dining room was bright. I could see their silhouettes, still at the table, clustered at one end. They looked happy. They looked perfect. I walked to the urgent care. The snow was falling faster. Covering my tracks, I had work to do. My job was to build the case. My job was to create the timeline. The group photo, the empty chair, the skipped plates, the off-script gratitude, the kitchen, the words sulking and smile, the slap, the crash, the laughter through the door, the threat, the bruise, the video. The fight would not be in the kitchen, it would be in public, it would be at her exhibit, the very stage she had built to celebrate her own perfection. I spent 3 hours at the Bristol Urgent Care, the fluorescent lights hummed, and the air smelled of sterile wipes and stale coffee. I was a model patient. I told the attending physician I had turned too quickly in a cluttered kitchen, striking my face on a cabinet, and that I had stumbled backward, catching my wrist on the edge of a sink to break my fall. He was professional. He noted the distinct pattern on my cheek, what he called a patterned contusion, and the severe swelling on my wrist. He sent me for an X-ray, which came back negative for a break, diagnosing it as a deep bone bruise. I left at 1:30 in the morning, Black Friday, with a prescription for an anti-inflammatory gel, a wrist brace, and a medical report that documented the size, shape, and color of the injuries on my face and arm. The report was a clean, objective, third-party document. It was perfect. I checked into a generic business hotel off the interstate, 10 miles from Westbridge. The room was beige and anonymous. I plugged in my laptop, took the USB drive from my pocket, and got to work. For hours, I did exactly what Aria had instructed. I became the operations manager. I opened the Westbridge Accounts archive and began a new master timeline. I tagged every file, the $12,000 for the roof, the $30,000 for Paisley's tuition, the recurring, insidious utility payments, the $400 charge for jewelry, tagged as props. I cross-referenced the dates of the transfers with the screenshots of Delia's manipulative texts. Just this once. For the family. The financial ledger was damning, but as I worked, sifting through my digital files, my mind drifted to my physical archive. In my apartment in the city, in the back of my closet, is a small, cedar-lined wooden box. It was my mother's. It smells like her. Faintly, of sandalwood and paper. It is where I keep the few things that are truly mine. My mother's letters, my college diploma, a few old photographs of her and my father before Delia, and my own important documents, my birth certificate, my passport, and a letter from my grandmother, Maeve Bancroft. My mother's mother, Maeve, was not a gentlewoman. She was sharp, practical, and saw the world exactly as it was. She had detested Delia from the moment they met, not with loud drama, but with a quiet, dismissive coldness. Maeve had died 6 years ago, and I had forgotten the last letter she gave me. It had been thick, heavy, and she had given it to me privately, with a strange formality. "Put this with your important papers. Sloane, do not read it now. Read it when you need to remember what you are made of." I had assumed it was a sentimental letter. I had put it in the box and never opened it. I did not have the box with me, but in my encrypted cloud, in a folder marked Personal Legal, I had a scanned copy of every important document in that box. I had made the scans when I was refinancing my apartment, just to have a complete digital backup. I stopped working on the financial timeline. I opened the Personal Legal folder, and there it was. Maeve Bancroft Final Correspondence, PDF. I clicked. It was not one letter. It was 2 documents. The first was a handwritten note, scanned in her neat, forceful cursive. "Sloane, a home is not a performance. It is a structure. It is meant for safety. When I saw what your father had allowed into that house, I made provisions. Your mother loved that land. I will not see it corrupted by a shallow, cruel woman. I will not see you broken to feed her vanity. This document is your shield. Use it." I scrolled to the next page. It was not a letter. It was a legal document. The Bancroft Homestead Trust. My blood went cold. I read the legal language, my eyes scanning faster and faster. My grandmother, Maeve, had established it 6 years ago. Just before her death, the Westbridge house, the land it sat on, had been in her family, the Bancrofts, for a century. She had given it to my mother, who had left it to my father. But Maeve, it seemed, had attached strings. The trust was complex, but the central clause was brutally simple. My father, Grant Mercer, was the current resident beneficiary, but the power, the control, was vested in a trustee. I read the clause, my heart pounding. "The role of active trustee shall be held in abeyance until such time as a specific condition is met. The condition is as follows. If the current legal spouse of Grant Mercer, it did not even name Delia, just her role, is demonstrated to have engaged in a pattern of verbal, emotional, or physical abuse, or created a hostile and unsafe living environment for a member of Grant Mercer's immediate family." I scrolled down, my hand shaking. "Then the role of sole acting trustee, with full and indivisible control over the disposition and habitation of the property known as the Westbridge Homestead, shall immediately pass to Sloane Mercer. The house, the land, all of it." It was a quiet, legal bomb, planted 6 years ago, waiting to be detonated. It was a plot twist written by the dead. I scrolled to the final page, the signatures, Maeve Bancroft, her signature firm, a notary's stamp, and my father's, Grant Mercer, dated 6 years ago. He had signed it, he had known, in a moment of clarity, or perhaps bullied into it by a dying Maeve who was stronger than Delia. He had signed away his wife's future claim. He had agreed to the terms, and I knew, with absolute, chilling certainty, that he had buried the memory of this document the second he signed it. He had hidden it from Delia to avoid the confrontation, and then hidden it from himself. Delia had no idea. She operated as the queen of a house she did not control, treating me as an intruder in a home that was, legally, mine to protect. My hands were trembling again, but not with adrenaline. This was power. I picked up my phone. It was almost 4 a.m., but I did not care. I called Arya. "You had better be in a hospital," she answered, her voice thick with sleep. "I am in a hotel," I said, "and I have the medical report. But I have something else. It is about the house." "The house? Sloane? Asset division is messy." "No, Arya. Not division. Control. My grandmother set up a trust 6 years ago. I told her the terms. I emailed her the scanned PDF as I spoke." I heard her click her mouse, the sound tinny over the speaker. There was a long silence as she read. "Sloane, she said finally, her voice wide awake, sharp as a diamond. Your grandmother was a magnificent woman. This is not a shield. This is a sword. This document is ironclad. He signed it. It is notarized. It is specific. And you, my friend, now have the demonstration of abuse. The video, I whispered. The video, the medical report, the police report you are filing in the morning, the financial archive showing a pattern of coercive control. Sloan, this is it. You can have her out of that house. So what do I do? You do, Arya said, her voice firm. Exactly what we planned. You do not show your hand. This document is our ace. We do not play it until the end of the game. You proceed. You file the police report. You get the timeline to me. We let Delia go to her party. We let her hang her perfect photograph. I understood. It is her stage, I said. It is her stage, Arya confirmed. She is building it for us. She is going to stand up in front of the entire town and tell them what a perfect family she has. And when she is at the height of her performance, that is when we introduce the evidence. We do it publicly. We establish the truth. And then, when she is exposed, we serve her. We serve her with the police report, and we serve her with the notification of the trust. We do not give her time to spin the story. We detonate everything at once. I felt a wave of cold, clean relief. The plan was no longer just about exposing a lie. It was about executing a legal consequence. I was about to hang up when my phone buzzed with an incoming text. I looked at the screen. It was my father. My stomach tightened. I read the message. Sloan, I am up. I see you are not home. Delia is very, very upset. She told me you had a terrible misunderstanding about the kitchen and you stormed out. She is worried sick. We are all worried. Worried sick. The narrative was already set. I was the unstable one. I stormed out. I kept reading. Please just call us, or come home. Whatever this is, we can fix it as a family. Delia has worked so hard on this exhibit for tomorrow. Please, Sloan, do not do anything to embarrass her. Just, please. I stared at the words. Embarrass her. Misunderstanding. He was still protecting her. Even now, he was not protecting me. He was managing Delia's emotions, just as he always had. He was oblivious to the violence, or, more likely, he was willfully ignoring it because acknowledging it would force him to act. For a moment, I felt the old, familiar sting of pity for him. He was weak. He was trapped by her. Yes, but also by his own desperate need for a quiet life. But the pity passed. It left behind something hard and resolved. I did not blame him. I did not even hate him. I just saw him, clearly, for the first time. He was a component in Delia's system, a man who had chosen to sacrifice his own daughter for a peaceful dinner. I would not be that sacrifice anymore. My role as the family's shock absorber, the one who took the impact so everyone else could remain stable, was over. I had been fulfilling a duty that was not mine, in a house I did not realize I was meant to protect. I did not reply to his text. I put my phone on silent, turned it face down on the hotel nightstand, and went back to my laptop. I had a timeline to finish. I spent the rest of the night in the beige hotel room, sleeping in 2-hour increments, waking up with a jolt. At 7 a.m. on Black Friday, I drove to the Westbridge police station. The building was quiet. I sat across from a tired-looking officer with a pen and a standard form. I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. I was the perfect, credible victim. I am Sloan Mercer, I stated. I am here to file a report for adult assault. The incident occurred yesterday, November 23rd, at approximately 7:14 p.m. The assailant was my stepmother, Delia Cross. I gave him the narrative, the verbal abuse, the command to smile, the slap, the fall. I gave him the address. I did not mention the video, the audio, or the trust, as Arya instructed. I just built the paper trail. He gave me a case number. I folded the receipt and put it in my coat pocket, next to the USB drive. I drove back to the hotel, stopping only for a large, black coffee. It was time to assemble the rest of the file. The next phase of the operation was financial. I sat at the hotel desk, my laptop open, the wrist brace on my right arm making my typing slow and deliberate. I focused on the Westbridge accounts folder. For years, I had just been a donor, blindly funding a system to keep the peace. Now, I was an auditor. I opened a new spreadsheet, column A, date of transfer, column B, amount, column C, Delia's stated purpose, column D, actual expenditure. I pulled up the last 3 years of the shared household account I funded. Delia's notes, attached to her transfer requests, were all categorized under household or maintenance. I found a transfer from April, column C, house maintenance, exterior spring cleaning, $5,000. I cross-referenced this with the credit card statement I also paid. I found the corresponding charges. $3,000 at the Lila Revenge Spa for a platinum package, a $1,200 charge at a boutique for an evening gown, $800 to a social media marketing firm that listed Paisley Cross branding in the memo. There was no exterior spring cleaning. I went line by line. Property tax shortfall was a weekend trip to the city. Plumbing emergency was a set of new, high-end luggage. Landscaping was Paisley's subscription box for her content creation. It was not just manipulation, it was fraud. She was using my money, given for the preservation of the home, to fund her and Paisley's lifestyle, all while claiming it was for the family. I tagged each fraudulent entry. The total, over 3 years, was north of $40,000. Next, the historical pattern. I needed to prove that my exclusion from the photograph was not an accident, but a habit. I called Mr. Henderson, the photographer. Mr. Henderson? Hello? It is Sloan Mercer. I made my voice sound small, slightly embarrassed. I am so sorry to bother you on the holiday. I was wondering, I have been so bad about keeping my own albums. Would it be possible for you to send me the digital contact sheets from the last few Thanksgivings? I would love to have copies of the family photos. Oh, of course. Sloan, he said, his voice full of warmth. Not a bother at all. I keep all my raw files archived. Let me dig them up. I will email you a link. I always thought it was a shame you were so busy during the shoots. Delia always said you were handling something in the kitchen. She is always keeping me busy, I said. Thank you so... Found them, he said, sending the drive link. Now, you have a wonderful day, young lady. The link arrived. I opened the folders. Year after year, the same pattern. The main, perfect shot. Grant, Delia, Paisley, then a few hurried, awkward shots at the end, after I had clearly been called back, where I was standing on the far edge, often slightly out of focus, or in the background. I was an addendum, an afterthought. This year was just the first time they had not bothered to include the afterthought. I downloaded the contact sheets. Then, I turned to my own medical history. I logged into my health insurance portal. I knew what I was looking for. I went back just over 1 year. June, a charge from the same Bristol urgent care. The diagnosis code, contusion, upper arm. The official note, which I had given them at the time. Patient collided with doorframe during a family event. I cross-referenced my calendar. The date was the day after Paisley's college graduation party. I remembered it now. Delia had been furious that I had given Paisley a practical gift, a check for a financial planning course, instead of the designer handbag she had demanded I buy. Delia had gripped my arm in the hallway, her fingers digging in like claws, shaking me. You will not embarrass me like this. Sloan, you will buy her the bag. The bruises had been perfect. Dark fingerprints on my bicep for 2 weeks. I had told my colleagues at Halcyon I had fallen. I saved the insurance claim as a PDF. Pattern of abuse. Check. The doorbell rang. I had ordered more coffee. The delivery driver was a young guy I recognized from a local pizza place. He handed me the cup, looked at my face, and winced. Whoa, that looks rough. Hope your holiday gets better. It sparked an idea. I went back to my financial archive. I looked for food delivery charges to the Westbridge house. I found one from last month. Paisley's study group. I remembered the night. Delia had been furious, screaming at Paisley on the front lawn about a failed brand partnership. I had paid the delivery driver at the door while Delia was shouting, "You are incompetent. You are worthless," in the background. I found the receipt. I called the restaurant. I asked for the driver, the one who had just delivered my coffee. I asked him if he remembered that night. "Oh, yeah," he said, his voice wary. "The lady in the fancy coat, screaming at the younger girl?" "Yeah, I remember. She looked crazy. I felt bad for the other girl." "I am a lawyer." I lied, my voice cold. "I am preparing a civil case. Would you be willing to sign a simple, one-paragraph statement attesting to what you saw and heard, in exchange for $100 for your time? Make it $150, and you have a deal. I will sign whatever you want. That lady was abusive." I had my third-party witness to her public behavior. I emailed him the statement. He emailed it back. Signed, within an hour. I added it to Mrs. Keating's own notarized statement, which she had emailed me that morning, detailing her own observations of Delia's pattern of verbal aggression and public humiliation directed at me over the years. The file was growing. It was no longer a personal grievance. It was a case. As I was sorting the witness files, I searched my email inbox for any correspondence between my father and me that mentioned Delia. The archive was vast. I narrowed the search. Delia and Brand. An email from my father, 2 years ago, popped up. I had forwarded him a request from a local charity asking me to speak on a panel about civic engagement. I had been excited about it. Delia had, apparently, not been. My father's reply, which I had barely registered at the time, was now a critical piece of evidence. He had written, "Sloan, this is wonderful, but perhaps not this year. Delia feels, and I agree, that we need to be careful. She is working very hard on our family's image in the community for her club work. We cannot have mixed messages," in her words. "Don't let Sloan talk. She ruins our family brand with all that non-profit talk. It is just bad timing." I had withdrawn from the panel. She did not just want my money. She wanted my voice. She wanted to silence my work, my identity, because it did not align with her brand. I saved the email as a PDF. Exhibit G, muzzling of career. My phone buzzed. It was Aria. "Sloan, I am at my office. The petition for execution of the Bancroft Homestead Trust is drafted. It is a thing of beauty. It cites your police report number, the medical report, the financial analysis, and the pattern of abuse. It is ready to be filed and served. All I need is the signal." "You will have it this afternoon," I said. "I am assembling the final piece now." "What is the final piece?" "The delivery system," I said. I took the new, blank USB drive I had bought at the hotel gift shop. It was sleek and black. I plugged it into my laptop. I dragged one file onto it, the 1-minute, 12-second video file from Mrs. Keating's doorbell, the slap, the crash, the command to smile. I ejected the drive. I took a silver permanent marker and wrote on the side, in clean block letters, "Thanksgiving cut." My phone buzzed again. A text from Mrs. Keating. It was a picture. It was the main wall of the Westbridge Country Club. In the center, beautifully lit, was the framed photograph from last night. Grant, Delia, and Paisley, smiling by the fire. It was perfect. It was a lie, and it was now public. The caption on the museum-style plaque beneath it read, "The Mercer Family, a moment of gratitude, donated by Delia Cross." I saved the picture. I printed it on the hotel's business center printer. I took my pen and, at the bottom of the page, I wrote, "Sloan Mercer, absent by order of Delia Cross, assaulted at 7:14 p.m. off camera." This was my timeline. This was my one sheet. I picked up my phone and dialed the Westbridge Country Club. "Good morning. I am calling about the Thanksgiving photo exhibit," I said, my voice bright and professional. "I am calling on behalf of the Mercer family. We have a wonderful surprise for Delia. A short video tribute to open the exhibit, thanking her for her hard work. It is only about a minute long. We would love to have it play on the main projector just before her opening remarks. The manager, a man I knew was desperate to keep Delia happy, was ecstatic. A tribute! How lovely! Of course, the projector is all set up. Just bring the file on a USB drive. We can plug it right in. Fantastic, I said. I will be there at 4:45 p.m., just before the 5 p.m. start. I will handle the file myself. It is a surprise, so please, do not mention it to her. My lips are sealed, he promised. This will be a wonderful start to the event. I am sure, I said. It will be unforgettable. I hung up. I placed the USB drive, the police report, the medical report, the financial spreadsheet, the witness statements, and the captioned photograph into a single, neat manila envelope. The plan was set. The stage was built. The audience was invited. All I had to do was show up. I arrived at the Westbridge Country Club at 4:45 in the afternoon. The Black Friday Thanksgiving family photo exhibit was scheduled to begin at 5 o'clock. The main ballroom was already filling up. It was exactly as I had pictured. Soft lighting, classical music, waiters circulating with trays of champagne, and the scent of expensive perfume and pine from the holiday decorations. I was dressed in a simple dark gray wool dress. I had spent an hour with concealer and foundation, masking the bright, angry purple of the bruise on my cheek. It was a passable job. It just looked like a stiff, puffy shadow, as if I had a dental problem. I wore the wrist brace, hidden beneath the long, tight sleeve of my dress. The club manager, a nervous man named Davies, saw me by the door. "Miss Mercer, so glad you could make it. Is this for the tribute?" I said, holding up the black USB drive. "The surprise for Delia." "Wonderful, wonderful." He was beaming. He clearly loved being in on a secret. "She is not here yet. Let us get it tested on the projector. We have it set up by the podium." We walked to the front of the ballroom. The large projector screen was hidden, retracted into the ceiling, waiting. The podium was set up with a laptop. I plugged in the drive. The file Thanksgiving Cut appeared on the desktop. "Should we run it?" he whispered, conspiratorially. "No need," I said, clicking the file once to select it. "I tested it this morning. It is ready to go. Just click this when you make the announcement. It will play automatically." Perfect. This will be such a lovely start to the evening. I nodded, my face feeling stiff from the makeup. It will be memorable. I took a glass of water from a passing waiter and moved to a standing position in the back corner of the room, near the audio-visual controls, partially obscured by a tall, heavily decorated Christmas tree. I had a clear view of the podium, the main exhibit wall, and the doorway. At 10 minutes to 5, they arrived. Delia made her entrance. She was wearing a deep, sapphire blue velvet gown that shimmered under the lights. She was radiant, energized, the queen in her court. My father was at her side, looking diminished in a dark blazer, his face pale and strained. He was performing his role as the supportive husband. And Paisley was just behind them, her phone held high in front of her face, already live streaming. "Hey guys, we are here." Her voice cut through the polite murmur. "We just arrived at the country club. My mom's exhibit is literally everything. Look how beautiful this room is." She panned her camera around, capturing the elite of Westbridge. She was narrating her perfect life, as always. Delia immediately began to work the room, accepting air kisses, her hand on her husband's arm. "Oh, it was nothing," she was saying to a group. "It is just, family is so important, is it not? Capturing those bonds, that is all I wanted to do." I watched her drift toward the main wall, where her masterpiece was hung, the framed photograph from last night. The Mercer family, a moment of gratitude. It was lit by 2 dedicated gallery lights. Delia stood beside it, posing, as people took pictures of her next to her picture. She looked at the photograph, her smile full of proprietary pride. At 5 o'clock sharp, Mr. Davies walked to the podium. He tapped the microphone. The resulting thump quieted the room. "Good evening, Westbridge," he said, his voice booming. "Welcome to the first annual Thanksgiving family photo exhibit. What a wonderful turnout. I want to thank our incredible chairwoman, Delia Cross, for putting this all together." The room burst into applause. Delia, standing by her photo, placed a hand on her chest, a perfect, humble gesture. "Delia, your work is inspiring," Davies continued. "And before I hand the microphone over to you for your opening remarks, I have been told that your family has a little surprise, a special tribute to thank you for all your hard work." I watched Delia's face. The performance of surprise was flawless. Her eyes widened. Her mouth formed a small O. She looked at my father, who looked utterly, genuinely bewildered. He had no idea what this was. Paisley swung her phone toward the pum, her voice whispering to her audience. "Oh my God! Guys, a surprise tribute. They are so sweet. This is for my mom." Delia turned her beaming, expectant face to the screen. The room was silent. Mr. Davies, smiling, clicked the file. The lights in the ballroom dimmed. The large screen descended from the ceiling. The projector flared to life. For the first 3 seconds, the image was exactly what they expected. The photograph, the glossy, perfect, 10-foot-tall lie of the Mercer family, a moment of gratitude. Grant, Delia, Paisley, smiling by the fire. A few people in the audience sighed. How lovely. Then, an abrupt, jarring cut. The screen went black for 1 second, and then it was filled with the grainy, wide-angle, black-and-white view from Mrs. Keating's doorbell camera. The audience let out a collective, confused murmur. They thought it was a technical glitch. Delia's smile faltered. My father leaned forward, squinting. Then the audio crackled on. Tinny, distant, but terribly clear. "Ruining the holiday." Delia's voice, sharp and high, echoed through the ballroom. All you had to do was sit there and eat and smile and be grateful. The confusion in the room turned to a cold, sharp intake of breath. Paisley's phone, I could see, was now pointed directly at the screen. On the screen, the 2 figures in the kitchen were unmistakable. One was gesturing wildly, the other stood, still as a stone. Then, the command that everyone heard. "Smile," I said, "smile." The figure of Delia, 10 feet tall, raised her arm. The sound of the slap was not a boom. It was a sharp, flat crack, like a dry branch snapping. It cut through the silence. The audience flinched as one. I watched myself stumble back on the screen. I watched the heavy roasting pan crash to the floor, the sound a metallic explosion through the speakers. The clip did not fade to black. It froze. It froze on the image of me, holding my face, and Delia, her hand still raised, her face a mask of rage, and in the bottom corner of the screen, the timestamp, clear as a police report, NOV 23, 7:14 p.m. The projector shut off. The screen retracted, slowly, into the ceiling. The classical music did not resume. The silence in the ballroom was total. It was absolute. It was a vacuum, heavier than any noise. I heard it, from the table closest to me. A woman, her hand halfway to her mouth, dropped her silver dessert spoon. It hit the side of her plate with a single, sharp, metallic clink. The spell was broken. I looked at my family. My father had sunk into a chair by the wall. His face ashen. He had his hands over his mouth. His eyes closed. Paisley's phone was no longer held high. It was at her side, pointed at the floor, but the red light was still on. She was still streaming. She had streamed everything. Her face was chalk white. Delia. Delia was frozen by her photograph. Her hand was still on her chest. Her smile of feigned surprise was a grotesque, stretched grimace. She stared at the blank wall where the screen had been. She looked like she had turned to stone. I stepped out of the shadow of the Christmas tree. I walked the length of the ballroom. The only sound was the click of my own heels on the polished hardwood floor. Every eye in the room, hundreds of them, followed me. I did not look at any of them. I walked directly to the podium. I stood next to the horrified, paralyzed Mr. Davies. I did not touch the microphone. I did not need to. My voice, in the suffocating silence, was perfectly clear. "That," I said, "is the back of the perfect picture. That is what happened at 7:14 p.m., 10 minutes after I was ordered out of the moment of gratitude for not knowing how to smile." My voice was not shaking. It was the voice of an operations manager delivering a final report. I turned my head, just slightly, to look at Delia. She flinched. "I am not here to scream," I continued. "I am not here to make a scene. I am just here to present the facts. I do not need to. The evidence does it for me. But I do have witnesses." I looked into the crowd and found Mr. Henderson, the photographer, who looked like he wanted to crawl under his table. "I invite Mr. Henderson to confirm that the first photograph, the one still on that wall, is the one he took, the one he was instructed to take, without me in it." Mr. Henderson stared at me, his face slick with sweat. He gave a tiny, jerky nod. "I invite Mrs. Keating," I said, my voice carrying to the back row where she stood, "to confirm that the video footage is from her security camera, which she provided to the Westbridge police, along with her witness statement, this morning." "I do," Mrs. Keating said, her voice crisp and clear. I looked at my father. He had taken his hands from his face and was staring at me, his eyes full of a terrible, bottomless shame. "I invite my father, Grant Mercer, to confirm that he was in the next room, listening to Paisley's live stream, doing nothing, while this happened." He closed his eyes. He said nothing. His silence was his confession. Finally, I looked at the crowd. I turned my head just enough so the light from the gallery fixtures illuminated the stiff, puffy, concealed bruise on my cheek. "And I invite all of you," I said, "to review the police report I filed this morning for adult assault, and the medical report I received last night for the injuries to my face and wrist. The performance is over." I paused, and my voice dropped, but it was the coldest, sharpest thing I had ever said. I choose safety over silence. I stepped back from the podium. The silence in the ballroom held for 1, 2, 3 seconds. It was a dense, heavy thing, a physical weight. Mr. Davies, the manager, was fumbling with the microphone, his face a pale, sweaty mask. The exhibit, this event is canceled," he stammered, his voice cracking. "Please, for safety reasons, we must ask you to leave." The room, which had been frozen, shattered into motion. People stood up, not in a panic, but in a quiet, horrified rush. They gathered their coats, their faces a mixture of shock and a kind of dark, feverish excitement. Phones were out. I could see the glow of screens as people texted, their murmurs filling the void. "Did you see her face?" The sound it made. Delia Cross. I always knew. Paisley, her face chalk white, finally fumbled with her phone, her thumb mashing the screen. The red live light blinked off. It was too late. I knew, just as she knew, that her broadcast of Perfect Family had just become the most watched video in Westbridge. Her followers would have saved it. Her performance had captured my evidence. My father was still in his chair, his head in his hands. He was rocking, a small, silent motion of grief. Delia was the last to move. She was still standing by her photograph, the one that celebrated her lie. She turned, her movements stiff, robotic. She looked at me, her eyes no longer furious, but hollow with a disbelief so profound it was almost absolute. "You," she whispered, her voice a dry rasp. You can't." It was then that the ballroom's side door opened. It was not a fleeing guest. It was Aria Nolan. She was dressed in a dark, severe pantsuit, carrying a single, thick leather portfolio. She looked like what she was, an executioner. She did not look at the crowd. She did not look at me. Her focus was entirely on the small, ruined family group at the front of the room. She walked directly to my father and Delia. The few remaining guests gave her a wide berth, sensing a new act was beginning. "Ms. Cross? Mr. Mercer?" Arya's voice was not loud, but it was sharp and clear, designed to cut through emotion. Delia turned, her eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" "I am Arya Nolan. I am counsel for Sloane Mercer." She opened her portfolio and produced 2 thick envelopes, bound in legal blue backing. "I am here to serve you both." She handed the first envelope to Delia and the second to my father. Delia stared at the packet as if it were a snake. "Serve me? This is a family matter. It was a misunderstanding. She whirled on me, her voice rising, finding its old shrill power. "You ungrateful girl! I was trying to teach you. It was discipline." Arya did not raise her voice. She did not have to. "Ms. Cross, what you are calling discipline, this state calls assault, per the report filed this morning, case number 97284, what you call a misunderstanding. The video timestamp confirms as a 7-minute, premeditated verbal attack followed by a physical one. Your words were sulking and smile. Those are not words of discipline. They are words of control." Delia ripped the envelope open. She pulled out the document, her eyes scanning the first page. What? What is this? The Bancroft Homestead Trust? This is nonsense. This is my house. My father, his hands trembling so badly he could barely open his envelope, was staring at his copy. He was not on the first page. He had flipped to the last. He was staring at the signature line. "Grant!" Delia shrieked, her voice cracking. "Grant, tell her! Tell this woman this is ridiculous. This is our house. Tell her!" My father looked up from the paper. His face was not just pale, it was void. He looked past Delia, past Arya, and directly at me. His eyes were dead. "I signed this," he whispered. Delia's entire body went rigid. "You... what?" "6 years ago," he mumbled, staring at his own signature. "After Maeve died, the lawyer said... he said it was just a formality, to protect the land." "You... signed... this?" Delia repeated, each word a separate, venomous stone. She finally understood. The video was a humiliation. This document was an eviction. "Mr. Mercer signed this document," Arya stated, stepping between them, "which has been verified and is legally binding. Ms. Cross, your actions last night, which you were foolish enough to commit in front of a window and a security camera, have triggered the central safety clause of the trust." Arya's voice was now a cold, hard summary. The clause states that if the spouse of Grant Mercer, that is you, engages in a pattern of verbal, emotional, or physical abuse, or creates an unsafe living environment for a family member, the trust is activated. Your assault on Sloane Mercer, a beneficiary of this trust, was the final documented act in that pattern. The police report, the medical report, and the financial records of coercion confirm the pattern. Delia was shaking her head, her perfect hair coming loose, a blonde strand falling across her face. No, this, you. As of the service of this notice," Arya continued, her voice overriding Delia's denial, "at 5:17 p.m., Black Friday, full and sole control of the Westbridge property, its contents, and its habitation, passes immediately to the designated trustee." Arya paused, letting the words hang in the empty, ruined ballroom. "The trustee, as designated by Maeve Bancroft, is Sloane Mercer." Delia let out a sound, a high, thin wail that was part scream, part sob. "You cannot throw me out of my home. I am his wife. You cannot do this." "I am not doing anything," Arya said, her voice devoid of emotion. "Your own actions did this. The trust and the law are merely the consequence. You are the individual who violated the terms. You must vacate the property. The law provides a 30-day window." 30 days, Delia gasped, clinging to it. "However," Arya continued, Given the documented physical violence, we are not leaving Ms. Mercer at risk for 30 days. To de-escalate this, we are offering a one-time limited mediation. It is not a negotiation, it is a directive. Arya turned to my father, who looked like a hollow shell. Mr. Mercer, your cousin, David Mercer, has a guest house on his property. We have already spoken to him. He is expecting you. You will relocate there, temporarily, to allow a neutral cooling-off period. Then, she turned to Delia, who was weeping openly now, the ugly, gulping sobs of true catastrophic loss. Ms. Cross, you will pack one bag. You will vacate the main homestead tonight. Your lawyer may contact me on Monday to arrange for the removal of your personal effects. You will not contact, harass, or approach Sloane Mercer. And what about her? Delia shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at me. Sloane Mercer, Arya said, as trustee, will reside in the homestead to secure the property and its assets, effective immediately. The finality of it all finally landed. The room, the photo, the life, all of it, gone. Delia turned to me. Her face was a ruin. The tears had streaked her foundation. Her eyes were red and swollen. The mask of the perfect hostess was gone, and what was left was raw, ugly, and full of a hatred so pure it was almost a physical force. You did this, she whispered, her voice a guttural rasp. You did this to your father. You did this to your family. After everything I did for you, I raised you. I tried to teach you. You were a difficult, sulking child. And I was just trying to... She was still trying to spin the narrative, still trying to make me the child, and her the aggrieved parent. I walked forward, stopping just 5 feet from her. I looked at her, at the woman who had hit me, erased me, and stolen from me, all while smiling for a picture. No, I said. My voice was flat. It was the calmest, coldest thing in the room. No one touched a child. There are no children here. I am 32 years old. I looked at my father, then back at her. I am an adult, and I said enough. I did not go back to the hotel. Arya drove me to the West Bridge house. She walked me to the front door, the envelope containing her final invoice and a copy of the served trust in her hand. The locks are being changed at 9 a.m. tomorrow, she said, her voice practical, as if we had just concluded a routine audit. A security guard will be posted at the end of the driveway tonight. You are the trustee, Sloane. This is your property to secure. I walked into the house alone. It was just after 6 p.m. on Black Friday. The silence was absolute, a heavy, dense thing that smelled of cold turkey and pine-scented cleaner. The lights were on, just as we had left them for the exhibit. In the dining room, the plates from last night's disastrous meal were still on the table, cold and congealed, a testament to the chaos. I walked into the living room, and there it was, hanging over the mantel, lit by the same picture lights as always. The moment of gratitude. Delia must have spent that morning, Black Friday, having it printed and framed. She had swapped it out before she left for her party, replacing last year's photo with her new, perfect lie. Grant, Delia, Paisley, smiling. I stared at it for a full minute, the throb in my wrist a dull echo. I did not feel anger. I felt nothing. It was just an object. It was a piece of bad data that needed to be archived. I did not smash it. I did not tear it. I dragged a heavy dining room chair onto the carpet, climbed up, and carefully unhooked the heavy, oversized, gold-leafed frame. It weighed at least 20 pounds. I wrestled it to the floor, my bruised wrist complaining, and leaned it, face down, against the wall. I went upstairs to my old bedroom, to the cedar chest my mother had left me. In the bottom, under her letters, was an old, simple mahogany frame that had held my college diploma. It was empty now. I carried it downstairs. I hung the empty frame over the mantel. It was stark, dark wood against the pale wall. It looked balanced. I found a small brass plaque I had kept from an old award and a roll of mounting tape. I polished the plaque and affixed it to the bottom of the empty frame. It had only 3 words. Reserved for kindness. I slept in my old room that night. The house was quiet. But it was a different kind of quiet. It was not the tense, waiting silence of avoidance. It was the hollow, clean silence of an empty space. The next morning, Saturday, my father called. He did not ask to come home. He asked if I would meet him at a diner in the next town. I agreed. He looked like he had aged 20 years. He sat across from me in the vinyl booth, his hands shaking, unable to meet my eyes. He just stared into his black coffee. I saw it. Sloan, he whispered. His voice was hoarse. I saw the video. At the club. I knew. I think I always knew. About her temper. You just did not want it to be your problem, I finished. My voice not unkind. Just factual. He nodded, a tear tracing a path through the stubble on his cheek. I was a coward. It was just easier. It was always easier to let you absorb it, to keep her calm. I told myself I was protecting the peace, but I was protecting myself. And I failed you. I failed your mother. I am so sorry. It was a late apology. It was 15 years late. But it was the first real thing he had said to me in a decade. What happens now? He asked, finally looking at me. His eyes were ruined. Now, I said, you go to your cousin's house and you get a therapist, a real one, not a marriage counselor, a trauma specialist. You have to figure out how to stand up on your own. And if I do? He asked, his voice desperate. If I do the work? Can our family be fixed? I looked at him. The operations manager in me saw a broken asset. The daughter just saw a very tired, sad man. I do not know. Dad, I said, and the word felt strange. But we can set new boundaries, and if you respect them, maybe we can have lunch again. That is the best I can offer. He nodded, accepting the terms. He paid for the coffee and walked out of the diner. Delia, of course, did not go quietly. Her lawyer, a bulldog from a high-priced city firm, called Arya on Monday. Arya put the call on speakerphone for me. We are filing a countersuit, the man shouted. Defamation of character, illegal eviction, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and alienation of affection. This trust is a sham. We will see you in court. Arya waited, letting him finish. She did not even take a note. Are you finished? She asked, her voice bored. We will. Yes, I am finished. Good, Arya said. My client's response is simple. We invite you to work with the documents. We have the time-stamped, high-definition video of your client committing assault. We have the police report. We have the corresponding medical report of the injuries. We have a signed, notarized trust, which your client's husband agreed to, and for good measure, we have a complete financial audit showing $40,000 in fraudulent transfers from the household account. If you file a countersuit, every single one of these documents becomes public record during discovery. Your client's character will be defined, permanently, your move. There was a long, static-filled silence on the other end of the line. I will consult with my client, the lawyer finally said, his voice a full octave lower. You do that? Arya said, and hung up. We would not be hearing from them again. Paisley's reckoning was, characteristically, digital. A text message appeared that afternoon. Sloan, I am so sorry. That was horrible. Mom is a mess. I had no idea she was going to do that. It was a weak, pathetic apology. She was sorry for the scene, not for the years of participating in the erasure. She was sorry it had become public. I typed my reply. Learn to stand up without stepping on others. I sent it, then I blocked her number. That afternoon, I received a call from my supervisor at Halcyon Civic Works. Sloan, she said, her voice warm. The Westbridge rumor mill is something else. I just wanted to make sure you were all right. I am, actually, I said, looking out the window. I am better than all right. Good, she said, because I have a follow-up, that Portland project, the director role for the West Coast expansion. The board was so impressed with your initial proposal that they have upped the budget. The offer is still on the table, if you want it. I looked at the empty frame over the mantel. I accept, I said. I can start in January. Before I began to pack up the house, my house, I stepped out onto the porch. It was cold and alight. Clean snow had begun to fall, covering the old tracks. I took my phone out of my pocket. I turned the camera around. I took a new picture. It was just me. My face, still faintly shadowed by the yellowing bruise. My right arm, still in the dark brace, and I was smiling. It was not a large, performative smile. It was not for a photograph. It was thin. It was tired. But it was real. I did not post the video of the slap. I did not post the picture of my face. The power was not in the public shaming. The power was in the quiet, binding, legal control. I copied the Thanksgiving cut video, the audio file, the financial spreadsheet, and the medical reports onto a single, encrypted hard drive. I gave it to Arya. "Put this in your firm's safe," I said, "for insurance." "I will," she smiled. "But you will not need it. The war is over. Sloan, you won." That night, my last night in the house, I did one last thing. I brought the empty mahogany frame down from the mantel. I set it in the center of the vast, polished dining room table, right where my empty plate had been. I lit a single, white candle in front of it. I looked at the empty space, the space reserved for kindness, and I said it out loud, just to the quiet, listening house. I am filling the frame with my own boundaries. I was packing my mother's cedar box, ready for the movers, when my phone vibrated on the table. A text from an unknown number. I opened it. "We are still family. Delia." I looked at the 6 words. I did not feel rage. I did not feel pity. I did not feel anything. It was just more data. I held down the message. A menu popped up. I tapped save. I added a note to the contact. "Delia Final." I saved the text to my archive, with one last, final tag. Family is a choice. Every picture needs criteria. I turned the phone off and placed it in my bag. I picked up the box, walked out of the house, and quietly closed the door. Thank you all for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are listening from. So please drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Make sure to subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and give us extra support by hitting that hype button so more people can hear this story.